Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Paul from For Real, and I'm here with Jeremy Turgeon, right, Jeremy? Did I say that right?
Turgeon, but
Turgeon?
close enough. Yeah.
Turgeon sounds better because there's a hockey player with that last name.
There you go. It's true. That it is true.
So I mean, we'll just pretend like you're like relatives. Who's gonna
I'm
know?
okay with that. I'm all right with that.
So we're here tonight on the 10th episode, which is kind of cool. I honestly, with my anxiety and everything else, didn't figure I would get this far, but it's been a ton of fun. So
Hell yeah, dude.
Thanks for coming on. We'll go ahead and have Jeremy kind of give you a little background on himself and where he's at with Brassman and Nerd, and we'll go from there. So, Jeremy, without further ado.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for having me on for sure. I started keeping when I was literally 8 years old. I remember being in one of the local mom and pop shops. It's called Dave's Soda and Pet Food City. That was nice. The name of the shop, and I threw a temper tantrum in the store over wanting some Firebelly toads, and I threw enough of a tantrum where my mom finally said yes, I could get one.
Nice.
And it was all downhill from there. No, but it took me a little while to convince her to have me get other things. But I was like enamored with that little toad, and I remember as soon as we had the internet in our house, I was on it as much as possible, researching as much as possible. So I had got a pair of green anoles, and I didn't realize, I was very young at the time, so I didn't realize that they were a pair, or of course anything about how reproduction worked at that point in my life. So they laid eggs, and then all of a sudden there were a couple babies that then got eaten by the adults because 10-gallon tanks, and
it's like snacks.
Yeah, exactly. And then I moved on to leopard geckos, and leopard geckos were the first thing that I bred purposefully.
Okay.
And then it took me about 6 years before my parents let me get snakes. And when they did, that's when it was like game on for me.
Yep.
I started with a corn snake from a local Petco that ended up not doing well, and an unfortunate story that we hear all too often. And it ended up going back to that mom and pop shop, and bought a ball python, and I still have that ball python now. She's about 16-ish years old.
That's cool.
And through the midst of different species of snakes and a handful of different species of lizards, by the time I got into high school, I had amassed probably a collection of 80 or so animals, and I started a business. My original business was called J&D Reptiles, and I ran that all through high school. I was doing YouTube pretty heavily and stuff back then, and all the way through my first semester of college, I had that business, and the only reason it stopped was because the person that I had put in charge is somebody who was working with me for a few years, and they messed it up and brought in an animal without me knowing and didn't quarantine it, and it got my entire collection of ball pythons sick. What I can only assume now was nidovirus, but back then we didn't know what nidovirus really even was.
Yeah.
And it caused me to shut everything down. I went from, at that point, 150 or so animals down to like 12, just because I was like, most of my collection was ball python. So unfortunately I lost most of my collection, and everything else I had, I sold off. There's other species that I was like, oh man, I really love this snake, but I'm in college. I don't have the time to take care of it, and I don't have any kind of financial support to pay somebody to come, take care of it for me while I'm away, any of that kind of stuff. So I kind of fell off the face of the earth for a little while. I just had my 12 snakes, and that was it. And then at 2017 Tinley Park NARBC, I was out there with my buddy Lenny from Demonic Reptiles, and I was trying to get myself back into keeping and breeding a little bit. I'm 14, so I was making some decent money and feeling comfortable enough to give my hand at it again. And 2017 NARBC USARK auction, maybe had one too many beers and started bidding on a snake. Yeah, started bidding on a snake that I inevitably won. And Phil Goss from USARK, who I've known for years, was running the auction for that particular animal. He said, "Sold, thank you, Brassman," because he knew that I played trumpet, and that's kind of where the Brassman thing came from.
Phil's really good at that.
Phil is really good at that.
Yeah, because I have one for you. I'll tell you when you're done. That's a pretty good one.
So that was pretty much that. I was like, oh, Brassman, that's kind of cool. I can dig that and people were also like, who the hell's the Brassman? Like,
that's funny.
So then I just kind of went with it. I started investing a little bit more into really just projects that I liked. Not that I didn't do that in my first venture, but ball pythons, 10 plus years ago were certainly a very different animal than they are back now. So I really focused on like Morelia, which is a big thing for me, and got into bloods and short tails, and got back into Amazon tree boas that I kept and bred when I was in my early mid-teens. And I've now amassed, as far as Brassman goes, now kind of amassed that same kind of size collection of about 150 to 175 animals that I just like too much stuff, man. Like that's the problem.
It's hard. It's hard.
And and I love every minute of it, man. I really do. As far as the nerd stuff goes, I've known Kev for over a decade, and he was one of my biggest mentors when I was coming up, especially when it came to ball pythons and genetics and all that kind of stuff. And I happened to be just visiting one day, and he kind of jokingly was like, "Hey, you need a job?" And I had my teaching gig, but I was like, I'm kind of getting tired of having 14-year-olds tell me to F off at 8 o'clock in the morning, so maybe I do want another job. Maybe I'll have a 25-year-old tell me to F off at 8 in the morning. That's right. Because I can punch him and I won't get in trouble.
Yeah. At least not as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been at Nerd now for getting close to 2 years, almost 2 years now.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that Kevin was looking for a manager. I thought he just needed somebody else to clean ball python poop. And when
snake poop is good.
Yeah, and when he was like, "No, I'm looking for a manager. I need some help on that front," and I was like, "All right, cool, man." And I haven't looked back ever since.
Good deal.
It's been amazing. I've gotten the opportunity. I mean, anybody who knows Nerd knows we've got some ridiculous animals over here. So it's been incredible getting the opportunity to work with the stuff like Boland's pythons and Amazon basin emeralds and different mangrove species, and the list goes on and on. But yeah, man, I love it. Of course, the worst part of the job is dealing with people. Yes. Most of us in the industry don't like dealing with people, but
not at all.
Yeah.
But no offense, everybody.
Yeah.
Much love.
But we love you guys.
Yeah, we love you, but we hate you too.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, man, just being around all those animals, and I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that for me.
Yeah. So back to the Phil Goss Brassman thing.
Yeah.
So Phil Goss calls you out as the Brassman and at the auction. So we were at it was Croc Fest at St. Augustine last year. It was before COVID, so it would have been Winter Croc Fest, December of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're sitting at the auction, and Cody had bid on some wood turtles, and then one of Cody's friends had bid and brought the price up. So Cody gives him the bird, and Phil Goss immediately calls out and says, "Birdman!" And calls him the Birdman, and Cody's like, "God damn it!" He's like, and he bids again, So because he's like, he called him out, so it was great,
That's perfect.
It's fun to see and hear stories like that from the auctions, and anybody that can go to a Croc Fest or a Tinley Park or one of the other big shows that Phil is at and doing the auction, he has a ton of fun with it. So it's definitely a good time. So. But one of the reasons that I started this whole thing was like I said, I have huge social anxiety. So I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something like this. I have a real hard time recording by myself. I've tried a half dozen times, and I have a real hard time with it. And I don't know if it's because when you do it in Zoom, you can see yourself. So I don't know if it's like I'm talking to myself and it's in my head. So I'm going to try again with our GoPro. So this way I can not have that, just have the camera in front of me and just kind of go from there.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man.
But one of my big issues here in Florida is the rulings and the rules that we have. And the problem that we all see, and it's nationwide, it's not just here, is the disconnect with the last, what's it been, 3 or 4 weeks of the push for USARK. I think a lot of people take for granted, and I've seen some of the posts where people are saying, hey, I don't think it's fair that, you know, I donate animals and everything to USARK for auctions and stuff. Well, this is the way I look at that. Thank you. It's fantastic that you do that. But if you're going to donate let's say $1,000 animal, how are you not paying $40 a year? And for those people that have come out and said you shouldn't have to pay for a USARK membership to vend at a show, if you have a pistol permit, you know that 99% of the classes that you take require you to join the NRA prior to taking the exam. And if you don't, you're not allowed to take the exam. And it's only $15 a year. Yeah. What's $15? You know, $40 a year broken down over 52 weeks is less than $1 a week.
Yeah.
Really? And to me, it's the first step in the aggravation. And I'll be honest with you, Friday, I after seeing all that stuff, I legitimately sat down and called my wife at work and told her, you know what? I think I'm done. I think I'm just going to bow out gracefully and not keep anything anymore, because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And I know that that's maybe not the right way to do it. And I've since come to my senses. The thought is still there. I'm not going to lie. It's mind numbing to think that we can give all the right reaction and be professional and present fact, and nobody wants to hear it. It's just a stone wall.
Yeah.
And I know Kevin's been around. Kevin has been around in all this stuff a lot longer than I have. And this is really, other than a few little things here and there, this is really the biggest fight that I've seen, you know, that I've been, like when the first big Lacey-Act stuff came in, I really wasn't into any of that stuff that was put into there. So it was like, it didn't really affect me. So shame on me for not taking a bigger part in it then. What do you see, and what have you heard from Kevin? Because I know Kevin is one of the guys that's, he's on top of things. He's on top of this stuff. He's presented, he's spoken at these events, you know. What is he saying? Do we have a chance at possibly turning this over?
So I definitely, I think you touched on one major thing before I go into the stuff that Kevin's been discussing. And that really is like the push for membership for USARK is massive, you know, and I've seen plenty of arguments, especially after, you know, not seeing the desired result in Florida. You know, a lot of people kind of like started to question, oh, why are we all joining USARK if we can't even win something like this? And it's like, you have to realize that there's a lot more going on. You know, there's a lot more than meets the eye. And I think the biggest thing, especially for people who don't live in Florida, who are just coming onto the scene from this big push and they don't understand the gravity of what's going on, is, you know, the FWC meetings have been happening for many months. I think over a year, almost over a year, or maybe closer to 2 or something. The
law started in Senate in January of 2020. It was voted in. So it went through all its processes. And if for those that want to Google and see step by step, search SB 1414 Florida, and that bill will come up and you can look at every step of the way. It was mid-March when it was actually voted in and handed over to FWC. So from March until March, a year.
Yeah, so an entire year of processing had to go on before we get the opportunity, you know, outside of Florida really see what's going on. So permit holders for species of concern typically will get those emails like, hey, there's a proposed rule change, we're going to have a meeting on this, whatever. Those of us that are outside of Florida, we don't learn about that unless we know somebody down in Florida that can tell us. So by the time it comes to a head like it has, there's already, like we use the comparison to like a tree. There's already a tree that has grown,
yep.
In this context, and we come to the table with this to attack a tree. This does a lot better for a seed or a sapling than it does a full-grown tree. So it's not as simple as just, USARK told us something is going on, and we expect that they can win this, and when something happens and we don't, it's not because we didn't do everything that we could. It's that the odds are immediately stacked up against us. So the membership thing is huge because it serves two purposes. First, financial, obviously. Phil is working most often round the clock, gathering information from all over the country, federal regulations, state by state regulations, sometimes even like county, regional, and local
county
legislation too.
Yep.
So he's taking in all of this information. That's a lot to do, so the financial aspect, to be able to allow him to work this as a full-time job and then have lawyers on retainer, both on the federal level and state level, that's not cheap. So the financial aspect is huge. The second thing is when you get a membership, that just adds to the overall number of members that join USARK. So I was talking about it in my live stream yesterday on my Instagram, where I was like, imagine being a part of an organization that wants to change something, and you have 50 members. Okay, 50 people, that's a good number of people if you're trying to do something maybe in your city, 50 loud voices, that's cool. But when you come to something at the state level or even larger, and you're met with the likes of PETA and the Humane Society that have probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of supporters, and you show up with your power team of 50, you're not heard. You're just not heard. They'll be like, thanks for coming.
Thursday and Friday, we saw that.
Yeah, so that's the thing where it's like, well, now suddenly if we have 10,000 members, 10,000, to something that has hundreds of thousands or millions of supporters, 10,000 might not necessarily seem like a whole lot. But when you get 10,000 loud, rowdy people, because let's be honest, reptile keepers, we're not quiet. So you get 10,000 loud, rowdy people coming to make a stink about something. I always call it's the stink. We got to make the stink. That number means so much.
Yep.
When you are when Phil has to go present himself as the head and president of an organization, it's a lot easier for him to stand a little taller when he's like, I am the representative of this group of 10,000 people that support this organization, that support responsible pet ownership and blah, 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 all those things. That has a huge impact, an even greater impact than we can even recognize. So I think that's like first and foremost the most important thing to realize there. As far as what's going on with what I've heard from Kevin with regards to everything going on in Florida, there are lawsuits that a couple people have been talking about. I know Kenan Harkin just did a video with Michael Cole talking about that a little bit, and there's some more. For those who are listening to this who aren't familiar about Kevin's group, Reptile Keepers Against Prejudice, that is one of the things we're working on too, because if you really think about contextually what's going on here, these laws that really nitpick the reptile keepers and the reptile breeders, there's a ridiculous and gross prejudice against us. Because I mean, if you think about it, Florida just changed this rule, but has yet done anything on the ownership of cats, has done nothing on the ownership of pigs, has done nothing major to address invasive insect species. FWC has already released peacock bass into waterways for fishing, continuously spraying herbicides along riverbanks and stuff, which can harm the environment for way longer. As I don't know if you saw the article about the manatee die-off, the crazy manatee die-off.
Yeah, red tide, the manatee die-off.
Yeah,
Yep.
like all these things play a massive role that barely get any attention, barely get addressed at all. But the snakes get addressed.
Yeah, the
snakes get addressed.
Oh, the snakes.
Yeah. So there's that angle of prejudice, because then there's also, I mean, if you think about, if you go and talk to the random nobody and you tell them like, oh yeah, like, what do you think about like somebody who keeps snakes? Like, describe somebody who you think might keep snakes. Most of the time, they're going to talk about some tatted up, big burly guy, probably a motorcycle driver, blah, 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 long hair, whatever, like Kevin McCurley, but more tattoos and a little fatter. Like,
What's that mean?
Yeah. I'm feeling it, brother.
Yeah, it's my winter coat.
That's right. But, I mean, like, that's an immediate, like, thing that pops into the brain. I mean, like, when we did one of our live streams at Nerd, one of the things that, like, even Rob pointed out was, like, the diversity of just myself, Kevin, and Rob, and our literal physical appearance. Like, I was a teacher. I still have that very much teacher-esque vibe
proper, very proper. I mean, you posted on Facebook today that Rob was weird. Listen, no stereotyping. Yeah. But if you, Kevin, and Rob were sitting with each other and they said, who keeps reptiles here, they would most likely pick Kevin and Rob. They wouldn't point you out. And you're right. That stereotype is, I mean, it is what it is.
Of course. I
mean, that's what we have to fight. So.
Right. Yeah. So the prejudice narrative is one where we have some pretty intense headway happening on that. So that helps us not just in the Florida instance, but it can really help us nationally when we're fighting against all these other states. I will say too, when it comes to Florida, for those who listen to the live comments, it was really easy to realize right off the bat where all the intentions were at.
Yeah, that law was passed before 8 o'clock in the morning for sure.
Exactly. And if you think that is conspiracy or anything, I want to point out one primary thing. Nobody was given the number to call in until a certain time. When that time came, who were the first groups of people that were able to get on? And with very little intrusion of any opposition, there was maybe like one or two that were able to like sneak their way in there that are probably like really good at texting that could get that number on. But it was the Humane Society, it was the Audubon Societies, it was this conservation group, it was this conservation group, whatever. And then the rest of the time, it was all the people in opposition, and every once in a while you would get that one person that's like, I'm scared of the pythons, but like it's whatever. But if that doesn't tell you immediately right there that there's a preconceived push happening on a far greater level than we need to protect the environment, that is the biggest thing. I've gone back and forth a little bit with a couple of buddies that are like, yes, but the environmental impacts are there. And I'm like, I'm not denying that.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's denying that. But the thing is, like, when you start throwing things around and saying like 80% of wild mammal populations are down in the Everglades, and you pin all of that or the vast majority of that on wild Burmese pythons, when you're not talking about cats, you're not talking about people. I said this in my live stream yesterday. Imagine if the U.S. government said you can only have one child.
Yeah.
Imagine if they said that. We would be losing our minds. But we are the most invasive thing on the planet.
So along with some of that stuff, I did some research. Obviously, I'm sure you saw some of the things that were posted. Rodney Beretta, was it Beretta?
I think
Yeah,
you're Barretto or something like that.
Barretto, yeah, Rodney Barretto. This comment is, and man, I'm literally going to email this video YouTube link to every state senator.
Mm.
And I have a 4-page list of House speakers for the state of Florida. Everybody's getting it.
Mm.
Mr. Barretto, you said, and this is a quote, and I didn't hear this directly, and I'm sure maybe you can speak to it, that our financial gain doesn't outweigh the environment. The environment comes first. Explain to me the article in USA Today that you want to dredge in a cove where manatees, turtles, and other wildlife birds live, to knock all that land out and build houses and a marina there for boats. Explain to me how that's not a financial gain for your development company. That is his development company. He paid $475,000 for the land. It's all open to the public to see. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. Number two, go on FWC's website, search out cat ownership. There are 9.6 million cats registered in the state of Florida, and they estimate only 30% are house cats. So the other 6+ million, and those obviously numbers could be skewed. There's no, who, whatever. Those numbers could be skewed. I don't know when they're from, but let's just call 5 million and 50%. So 2.5 million cats running around that are domesticated cats, but still living outside. How many animals are they killing?
Yep.
I'm not saying that we ban cats. I'm not saying that pythons, iguanas, tegus aren't bad for the environment. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as a past CSP holder, there was no violations in 10 years with that program. And I know that I'm going to get heat for this, and I don't care. Tax the program more. Make it $500 a year to get your permit. If you're breeding snakes and selling them, and you're not making $500 a year to pay to do business, guess what? Then you're not doing it right. I work in the pharmaceutical industry. We pay over $1 million a year to do testing. Guess what? That's called the cost of doing business. Would it be nice to have half of that money back? Well, for sure. But it's a cost of doing business. All businesses have it. You can't continue to say it's not fair, it's not fair. If we worked together and did this the right way, we could have come up with some sort of arrangement that would have said, hey, per animal tax goes to conservation in the state of Florida. You can't sell animals in these conditional species within the state of Florida, whatever. I had sent in an email about a year ago and talked with one of the FWC guys in the office and said, hey, you guys should hold a lottery every year. And every year somebody pays $50 like they do with, like in New York, they do the deer hunting. When you put in for a doe stamp, it's a lottery. You may get it, you may not. So you put that in for imported reptiles for species, conditional species. So if you have 500 people pay $50 a piece, maybe you're only going to pick 100 people, and they have 6 months to fill 1 or 2 tags where they can bring in X amount of animals. There's ways to do this to police it, make it better, and not have to just say, hey, sir, you've been running a business for 10 years. We don't really care about you. Have a nice day. Shut it down,
Yeah, I think it's important to note again, when it comes to being any kind of involvement in FWC, be it the commissioners or the agents that are on the ground that deal directly with the public and the permit holders, like, there are aspects of their job that certainly make their job not easy. And it is, of course, important to note that you're never going to make everybody happy. That old adage is very true. And,
I lost you. Can you hear me?
Each other?
Oh, there you go. I got you.
Okay, we good?
Yeah, I got you back. I lost you for a minute.
So when we have one of these FWC commissioners literally saying, we're doing this, we're going to put our foot down and work to save Florida's natural resources, the environment, blah, blah, blah. And then literally 24 hours later, an article comes up about how a plot of land that is vital to so many species, I'm just going to build some stuff on it and make some more money. Like,
we're going to dredge, we're going to put a marina in, we're going to add more boats to the area.
Yeah. That is literally the exact opposite of what you were just talking about the day before. Literally the exact opposite.
And it also goes against what he said, was it 2 years ago at the yellow anacondas, where he said, we understand these animals are already in the wild. There's really no purpose to put them to prohibit it anyway. They're already here. We're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's the things that people aren't seeing outside of Florida are the things like that. Again, I was a CSP holder. So when you have a CSP permit, it's $50 a year. You have an inspection. I think it was $50. It's either 50 or 100. Mm-hmm. You have an inspection. Fish and Wildlife officer comes to your house. They have a camera. It's recorded. Jeremy, if you were to say, hey, you know what? I want to request Paul McIntyre's permit or his inspection. I want to see the video. All you got to do is write a letter. I don't even think there's a fee, and they will send you that video footage of my whole house. Mm-hmm. They literally inspected my whole house, not just the area the animals were going in. They went to each of my kids' rooms, my room, bathrooms. They looked at everything. So for those that don't understand, first of all, some people are going to say, oh, that's an invasion of privacy. Oh, you can't do that. Guess what? If you want to have that permit to have those animals, there are going to be things you're going to sacrifice.
Yeah, and give and take.
Yeah, you can't. And I've had a fantastic relationship with both of the inspectors that I had in Palm Coast. And I talked to Damon, my inspector here in Osceola County, that I'll have for my venomous in another couple months. But I talk to him all the time. And I try to stay above the line. And if they ask, I'm going to tell. There's no hiding anything, which is a part of why and you guys know this, I freak out so much about the stupid free handling stuff, because guess what? Some of these guys are watching YouTube. I don't care. I posted, it had to be right towards the beginning of 2019. I posted a video unboxing a sun tiger from Dr. Larry's Reptiles. Mm-hmm. And 3 days after I posted that video, I got a phone call from my inspector asking about my import permit and did I have it, and he was going to swing by to take a look at it. So I didn't call him to tell him I got it. He saw that either somebody sent him the video and he saw it, or he saw the video himself and said, hey, I'm going to check on this import permit, which I did have. But fact of the matter is they are watching and they do see this stuff. And we need to be above borders, especially right now with so many states going after every little thing. I don't know what's going on in Texas, something about Burmese pythons and changing some wording. And, I posted something the other day and, a couple people got on me about, oh, it's never going to happen in Texas. Well, guess what? It's going to happen.
I shared the Texas thing in the Reptile Keepers Against Prejudice group, and there were some people who were like, oh, they're just changing the wording and putting berms on the list of species that require permits. But, the permit is a $50 permit you can literally get at Walmart or whatever. And I'm like, look, man, I mean, as far as applying for permits goes, that's probably about as damn easy as you're going to get. Like, cool. Yeah. But
it all starts somewhere.
Exactly. And that's what I was just going to say is, it might not seem like much, but who knows, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they might decide to change that verbiage again, or it might happen sooner, especially when, Florida does what it just did. Mm-hmm. I mean, when Rob spoke on the public comments, he was literally like, when I spoke in Maine about their proposed regulations, they literally cited Florida as the reason that they were thinking of even doing this. Now, we're talking about subtropical climate of Florida to the freaking Arctic tundra where most of the year is snow.
Yeah.
So, I'm not that far from Maine and there's still snow outside, damn it. There's snow all the way up there. Like, you know what I mean? So, So yeah, I just like it blows my mind, but it also, that's one of the things that I don't think, especially, as the new wave of members come to USARK and we try to bring people to USARK, and people are like, well, why are we worried about what happens to another state? It's like, well, because these states are jumping on board with other states that are kind of spearheading these things. In Florida, if you know anything about the reptile industry as a whole, as a national
That's
thing,
the hub.
Florida is a huge percentage of stuff happens in Florida, from importation to big breeders to the big wholesalers, to all that stuff is in Florida, and the thing to point out again too is, you might be able to have conversations with your FWC agent or whatever about these things, because they might not even necessarily agree with certain
they
rule
don't
changes.
listen, they don't agree, and they're like, damn, like they don't want to be, they're the ones in the middle. So my understanding from talking to a couple of them during the Daytona show last year was they were happy with the CSP ruling. They have a job to do. What they're told to do, they're going to do. And I understand that. They have a job to do. So I'm in no way going after the officers or the people in the office. It's the commissioners right now that we have an issue with. And honestly, if anybody knows me personally, I was in the collection industry for a while, not terribly long, but for a while. And I know how phone systems work when you're dealing with multiple systems and multiple incoming calls. And guess what? It's super easy to sit in front of that queue and Google a phone number and say, nope, we're not going to take that call. Nope, we're not going to take that call. Oh, we know that this is from this area. We know this guy is out there. We're not going to take that call. Oh, look, I Googled this. That's an attorney from Florida. We're not going to take that call. It's really easy to weed people out and say, hey, you know what, we're just going to go this route. But yeah, the officers that are out here in the field are like, man, now they have to come and explain to everybody, hey, sorry. And they are made out to be the bad guys a lot of times, and it's really not them. I mean,
yeah, and that's the thing, and you can have conversations with them, I'm sure, and you talk about this and you're like, man, the science is wrong, and this, all these facts don't support it, and they might be totally on board, and understand it, and they get it, and they're, man, you guys have a solid point. But at the end of the day, the commissioners, and in other states, the committee members and the politicians that are involved in these decisions, they don't care about the science. They just don't. They have their own special interests at heart. As we're seeing with the commissioner that now wants to, destroy a very vital lagoon.
Who's, by no means should people not know this, he is the chairman of the FWC commissioners. So he is the top guy, and this is not his first term. He served as the commissioner for, I think it was 7 years prior to being reinstated to be the commissioner now, and he is the commissioner until 2024.
Yeah, and that's I said this on my live last night, and I'll say it again. Whoever allowed a land developer to become the head of an organization that's supposed to be protecting wildlife is an idiot.
Yeah, and agreed.
And you need to reevaluate yourself, because this is when, if you've never heard the term conflict of interest, this is literally where we're getting to. And these people, they don't care, they don't listen. When we did the video, when Rob and I did the video with Kevin and Phil Goss and Josh Ortiz and Carlos Michelson about the South Carolina tegu ban. Carlos down in South Florida's got all this information regarding the tegus in Florida and how they act and how they're found and all these things. And, to be able to give all of that data and say, hey, you guys are wrong, and here's why. I'm not just saying you're wrong because I have a love for these animals, but I'm telling you you're wrong because I'm actually on the ground doing the work that your people are supposed to be doing. And this is what I'm finding. And they don't care, and Phil said it best, politicians in particular, their job when they get elected to office is to pass laws and be a part of these committees that pass regulations and change things for the better. so we have to, that's why we have to make our voices heard, be it in opposition or favor of whatever it is, be it something in the reptile world or whatever, because how that happens, it sometimes, not all the time, especially if there's already special interest groups involved, but can sway the balance, and be like, what, maybe we should table this and discuss it more and get a tag to happen.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with people that aren't scientists. We're dealing with people who are concerned about tourism, who are concerned about local economics, who are concerned about commerce in the region, because these are things that if they start to fail, they will lose their job.
So leaning on the tourism thing, one of the things that really irked me was the show that was it on Nat Geo, the python hunters, where the guys were diving around in the swamps and talking about how this 9-foot snake was going to eat a human being, and they're killing this and oh my God, so bad. We've sensationalized this ourselves. Unfortunately, we've turned this into people are getting paid a substantial amount of money to hunt Burmese pythons.
Yeah.
Iguanas and tegus have been loose in Florida since the 40s. I understand. By no means people are paying thousands of dollars to have landscaping done, their outsides of their house. I get that. And you know what? I get it. So we're putting all this funding into Burmese pythons, and iguanas are some of the simplest animals to catch. And we don't have anything for those that we could eradicate some of that. And, a year ago when I want to say it was the same guy, Rodney Barros or whatever his name is. He came out and said, kill them any way you can. And a pool guy got shot with a .22 because the person in the yard next to him missed. So
I remember that. I remember seeing videos of like people just kicking iguanas and stuff, and
like, come on, we have to be smarter than the average bear, and that's like I said before. I lean on the YouTube stuff. We can get on YouTube now. It's instant gratification. If you have to fix your car, if you want music lessons, there's a million things you get from YouTube. It's fantastic, but it's also bad. And when we do things that are below the line because we just don't care and we're looking for that instant gratification of somebody liked my video, somebody clicked on my video, somebody subscribed to me, YouTube is sending me a check, there has to be a check and a balance. We all have to hold these people accountable, especially during these times. I'm not saying that I think that we should all say, hey, don't do that. I'm just saying don't do it on social media. You do whatever you want on your own free time. I don't care.
Yeah.
But when you're putting it out for everybody to see, it can have a counterproductive reaction. And I think sometimes we as humans think if we do it this way, we're going to do something positive, but sometimes that backfires. And that positive turns into a negative, and you're like, oh crap, that's not how I wanted, or it's not what I meant. We don't want this banned. It's not because we don't agree with the environmental part of it. That's not what that means. That just means there's a better way to do it. And
exactly.
If it means putting together a committee of people that are outside of Florida to be non-partial to us in Florida, then that's what it means. Phil Goss has so much experience in all this that I'm sure if they sat down in a room and said, we want to put together a commission of people from outside the state of Florida to draft a rule, we're going to take the existing rule and make it better, I'm sure that something could be come up with. And like you said, not everybody's going to be happy, but at the end of the day, if we can avoid having all those 16 species prohibited and have them just remain under the CSP and refine that rule, who are we to complain about it if we get to keep the animals?
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely do agree the social media lane is one that for many years has been touted as a massive positive and potentially a massive negative for us in the industry. And I don't want to get into too much about it because I go off on my own tangents, but I will say this just because of the recent attention to different YouTube videos and not necessarily from any one particular person, but from various people. You have to understand one thing, and that is YouTube in particular is one of the most difficult platforms to be successful at. That's just what it is.
For sure.
And your thumbnail and title literally are what guarantee you the success. Because more often than not, if you look at watch rates, people will only watch, between 40 and 60% of a video. Most people aren't watching a whole video. So the title and the thumbnail mean a lot. So I know I'll say a couple names just because it is what it is and I don't mind. People annihilate Brian Barczyk. Absolutely annihilate him. And all I will say is this. Brian is a friend of mine. I've known him for a very long time. I love the guy to death. Anybody who is saying that he doesn't care about the animals, he has no heart for reptiles, he's just doing this for the money, I will tell you, you need to talk to the man and or go visit the Reptarium and have a moment to speak with him, because that man, the last time I was at his place, and now mind you, I went to his last big facility that was 15,000 square feet.
Yeah,
of
I was
just
there
reptile
too.
breeding.
Yeah, I was there too.
Even then, he in being able to not get lost in a room that big and be like, "Hey, Brian, where's your albino Chinese king rats?" And it's like, "Well, let me go through these 15,000 drawers, and I'll tell." And he's like, "I know exactly where it is." So for somebody who didn't care,
I lost you again. Uh-oh.
If it was somebody like is happening in their collection.
I lost you there. I lost you right at if he didn't care. Damn it.
Oh, okay. So if he didn't care, he would just kind of be like, it's wherever it is. It's somewhere.
Yeah.
But for him to be able to be like, oh yeah, no, they're right over here on the left aisle on the bottom. Like that tells you that he's so aware, to be in a large scale facility like that, like his old facility, and still be able to know, and now in an even more concentrated setting where he's downsized a lot because he's trying to do better as a keeper, as just an animal lover. He's working that out. And when I was last up there with Will Nace, it was like, hey man, where are these? And he was like, bam, I knew exactly where it is. It's like, if you can navigate 10,000 drawers, you can navigate, 500 way easier, but
so I want to interject on the Brian thing, because I've been a huge supporter of Brian's for a long time. And we ran a paintball league called the USPA, was an X-ball league out of New York, and we had tournaments in Michigan, in Flint. So we knew that we drove through or very close to Shelby Township, which was where the big facility was. I sent him an email and I told my daughter, hey, if he even replies, I'll be surprised. And within an hour, he replied, yes, come out. And I told my daughter, don't get your hopes up. We're going to probably get in that front area. We might get to meet a couple people. Maybe he'll bring some ball pythons out. But I just don't want, she was young. I didn't want her to get her hopes up and then get there and have it be like, oh, that definitely wasn't what we thought.
Yeah.
So we got there and Brian brought us right in and told us, open up anything you want. What do you want to see? I'll show you anything. If anybody's been in a reptile facility, you're going to find poop. You're going to find water dishes spilled. You're going to find sheds in cages. You're going to find things. You're in a facility my size, which I have 25 snakes. You're going to find that. It just is what it is. It's reptiles. If you know anything about reptiles, as soon as you clean everything, that's when everybody decides this is the perfect time. I'm going to either spill the water bowl or take a crap, or take a crap in the water bowl and spill it.
Yeah.
So you go in and you come into that. Now, with that said, I understand the thumbnail thing. And over the weekend, I dove into some rabbit hole that I was watching videos that by the time the video was over, I was like, I have no idea what I just watched. But it was a lot about social media and your YouTube channel and how to make it bigger and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And they talk a lot about thumbnails, and that's the first thing somebody sees, and you got to make it eye-catching. Here's my problem. Mm-hmm. The day after this ban goes in place, Brian's got a thumbnail, my 20-foot snake almost kills me. Yeah. How does that look?
Yeah.
Listen, he's got almost 3 million followers. Good Lord. Unbelievable work. But here's the thing. With that comes great responsibility to this industry and to all of us as the one that we're all looking up to. And his videos automatically in the algorithms get pushed right to the top because he has such a following and he releases so many videos and he has cool thumbnails. But a thumbnail like that at that moment are the things that those are the things that make me cringe as a keeper, thinking if you went into where I worked, there's 500 employees. If you went up to one of them and said, what do you think of this picture? They'd be like, oh my God, but if I go in and talk to them and say, hey, I was feeding my snakes last night, one of them missed the rat and grabbed my hand. They're like, oh, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because it's a different conversation. They know that, so I get it. And again, people like Cody that I talk to all the time, I fight with myself internally about the support that I give to people because of things like that, we know as reptile keepers and people that know Brian, and I know there's a lot of guys out there right now that'll watch this and say, oh, Brian, the worst person in the world. He sold a snake to my friend that died after his friend had it for 6 years. And then that guy had it and Brian gave it back his money. So he must've been wrong. Fuck you. Yeah. I get so tired of hearing that shit.
Oh yeah, it's really frustrating. I mean, like if you really look at it, I mean, if BHB was unsuccessful, it wouldn't still be around.
No,
you know what I mean?
It's
just it's as simple as that, man. And I mean, like, look, the business adage is true. You will never make everybody happy. Not all of your customers will be happy customers, and that's just what it is.
For anybody, have you been to Arlington?
No, I've never been down. I need to go.
You need to go. My wife's grandfather was laid to rest there, and we went on our way down to a trip to Florida. We stopped there. I surprised her. We stopped there because she had never been there, and the most somber feeling in the world, to look over a hill and see those white stones as far as your eyes can see.
Yeah.
For those, and maybe this is a bad analogy, I don't know, but when I stood in that building in Brian's and looked down that aisle and 12 or 13 boxes high for 50 feet, 100 feet, whatever it was, all I could think in my head was there's no way every single one of these boxes has an animal in it. And I looked at him and I said, every single one of these boxes, all 8 aisles times 2. And he's like, oh yeah, they're all full. It's mind-numbing to think that anybody would have an issue with that or have an issue with him. And let me just say it like this. If you have 1,000 animals, you are inevitably going to see issues. If you have 500 animals, you're going to see less issues. If you have 100 animals, you're going to see less issues. If you have 50 animals, even less. This is something that you manage a facility. We've been to Nerd. We did the tour with Rob. It was awesome. There's a lot of animals there. You're going to see the bad. It's going to happen. And people have to understand that. And I've heard Brian get on and talk about, this guy has a problem with me and I tried to refund him back money and, he wanted this and he wanted that. And it's like, well, you don't, first of all, he doesn't need to answer to that on social media. That's my opinion. He runs a successful business. For those that don't like it, eat some D.
Yep. Legit.
I mean,
legit, man.
But again, back to things that we're doing here, i.e. the day of the meetings, Tyler Nolan, a picture of a Komodo Island pit viper wrapped around the finger that he lost from the king cobra bite, barehanded. Why? What was the purpose of that picture other than to say, hey, everybody in the reptile industry, screw you? Because that's how I took that picture, is just a big FU to all of us on the day of those meetings. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other guys that were like, hey, I'm friends with Tyler, but Jesus, talk about timing.
Yeah.
You know, it's awesome that he produced the babies. That's fantastic. You know, they're beautiful. But why?
Yeah.
You know, again, bad taste. Why post a video with it? Why post a thumbnail like that? It's the first thing everybody sees. And the first thing they hear is 20-foot snake, I almost died, Florida. Even though he's from Michigan.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Oh my God, it must have been in Florida.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I definitely do agree. I had the same kind of thought process when I saw that. When I saw his video, I was like, oh man, really? That's the thumbnail. That's the video we went with today. You know, I mean,
yeah. Just poor time.
It's poor time. Yeah, it is poor timing. And also, you know, it's important to note, like, because I mean, like Brian talks about it in vlogs and on his podcast. You know, where he's, you know, they film a couple days out.
Of course.
You know, so like that video is probably already set up in queue to be the video
scheduled to go up and.
Exactly.
It's
so
just
it's like
bad
it's just bad timing, and we're like, and I think the thing that frustrated me the most with that was just the immediate attempted annihilation of him. You know, from and I avoided getting involved only because number one, I don't have time to argue with people and comments on social media. Like, that's just not going to happen. But number two, I'm like, man, a lot of these guys are people that I also respect and get along with very well. And it's just kind of like, man, dude, like, you're missing the picture. You know, you're missing the bigger picture. Yes, like I said, I just agree. You know, man, and time. But you know, sometimes you have to be like, okay, shit happens. You know, we can be a little frustrated about this, but to literally see posts about this guy needs to be removed from the industry like the cancer that he is, and it's like, actually, you making that post and making that statement makes me feel a little bit more similarly to you. You know what I mean? It just being like,
there's a, I always take this as I work. I don't do reptiles as a business. I say this, I think, in every webcast. I don't do reptiles as a business. Yeah. We have reptiles. We love reptiles. We love people and know tons of people that have reptile businesses. That's just not us. I have a full-time job. My wife has a full-time job. And in my full-time job, there are decisions that I have to make that aren't very favorable for my employees, the people that work under me. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes I make a decision, it's not the right one. Shit happens. I fall on the sword, I admit that I did wrong, and I move on. But at the end of the day, I don't have my employees coming to me saying, you should be fired because, you know, you put that piece of equipment over there and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, we have levels of hierarchy. And I always say that Brian has found his niche in the reptile industry as much as this pains me, as somewhat of an entertainer, but he's the guy that is educating the new people coming in to the hobby. I'll be honest, I watched, if I'm going to guess, I'm going to say probably his first 800 vlogs because I was working nights. So when I got up at 12 o'clock, 1:30, whatever time I got up, I got a cup of coffee, I watched the vlog. Every day, ritually. The only 2 days I did work during the week were Tuesday and Wednesday. I still did the exact same thing. So I watched all those vlogs, but I'll tell you this, as somebody that's involved in the reptile industry, I do rely on his title and thumbnail to say, oh, am I going to watch this video now? Because I've already seen so many of these videos, unless I see something that catches my eyes, like retics, king rat snakes, you know, stuff like that, I generally don't watch it now because I've already seen 800 of them. So There's times that there's times on a Saturday or something when I'm working on I'll flip it on. It'll just keep going through videos, or it'll hit his podcast and I'll listen to that. But at the end of the day, you know, I've said this to Cody and other people that, you know, you get to a point where you're going to run out of stuff to say to somebody like me or you. But new people coming in are going to eat that stuff up no matter how many they've watched. And those are the people that Brian is bringing into the industry. So all these people, all of you guys that bash, whether it be Brian or any of the other big YouTubers that are doing reptiles, Miguel, Justin, I don't see how anybody could bash Justin. He's too nice of a guy. I couldn't even fathom that. But for all of those new people coming in that are getting to see that, you guys are benefiting from it, whether you want to admit it or not. You're getting people to buy animals from you. If your advertising sucks, your personality sucks, maybe one of these people saw you said Brian should die or he should be out of the industry, you just lost a customer, you know? Those are the things that you have to look at, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this one because but I think that's a reality that doesn't often get spoken about, you know. And I mean, like, 100%. Look, man, like even back in the days when he was doing snake bites, you know, I mean, for those of us that were hardcore reptile guys, we were watching it because it's like, oh man, like imagine having that many snakes. Like, oh me and my daughter watched snake bites. When we found it, we watched the whole thing,
all of them,
every single video.
It was hard not to, because it was like, oh my god, you know, because he was that first large scale reptile breeder that opened up their facility in such a public way. You know, like, I mean, like Nerd does tours and everything like that, and that's cool, but like that's not like doing a video. You know what I mean? So that's really different, you know. So his niche for the longest time, especially when he started doing the vlogs, was like the new reptile owner, the person that's been afraid of reptiles. You know, the person that's been like, you know, I kind of think they're cool, but I don't really know anything about them. You know, those the quick facts, the quick-witted, fast-paced, whatever. Because that's, man, I mean, that's everything that's right here, man. Is it's instant gratification, just like you were saying. Like, I gotta see it now. I gotta see it now. And he's providing all of that content. So inevitably, it's generating new attention, and that literally trickles down to the rest of the industry, you know. And if you've got a problem with that, I mean, then you have a problem with how, you know, a lot of other things work. You know, I mean, think about everybody that, you know, starts their very first home improvement project. Where do you typically go? You go to Home Depot or you go to Lowe's. You know, unless you know about some, you know, local hardware store down the street, you're going to the big guys. And then maybe, you know, through some research and you start digging a little bit more, you find out, oh, hey, you know what, there's a smaller chain like Tractor Supply that has, you know, more of what I need, and maybe the price is a little bit better, and so I might only go to Home Depot if I absolutely need it. That is literally the same kind of trickle down effect. You know, you might see Brian travel to somebody's place and they're working on a project that Brian doesn't have. You know, and they'd be like, oh man, I got to remember that guy, because, you know, Brian just doesn't have that project. So whatever, you know. And, you know, like Brian doesn't really typically sell investment quality ball pythons anymore, because that's just not where his niche is. So, you know, as these people get more invested and they want to learn more and they want to breed more and do more, they might have to go somewhere else, and you might be that somewhere else, you know. So there really is a trickle-down effect that I think a lot of people fail to recognize when it comes down to it. And I mean, dude, if you saw everything that he was doing, and, you know, BHB, the Reptarium, the YouTube, the everything. I mean, dude, when I was at the podcast, I mean, all of it, and any other thing that he has his hand in, you know, the reptile prime betting and blah, 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 blah. And Brian's a super lighthearted guy. I remember talking with him and he was like, yeah, you remember that can't believe it's not butter commercial? Well, somebody like superimposed me on it and was like, I can't believe there's no mites. And it was like holding a ball python or whatever. And he's like, I wanted to find it because I was going to reshare it because I thought it was the funniest thing ever.
But you're right. And that is, I mean, we went out to his facility, and again, we were on our way to a paintball tournament. So Brian had asked, he's like, hey, can we film like shooting the employees with the paintball gun? I'm like, I don't know how OSHA might feel about that. He was like, well, no, we got to do it safe. You know, they can wear a mask. And I was like, oh, I thought you wanted to run around the building and just randomly shoot them while they were working. So
that's a nerd thing. That's a nerd thing.
He gets his camera and you know, we put masks on, and my buddy that I had 2 friends with us that they're so afraid of snakes that they sat, it was like 100 degrees outside. They sat outside the whole time. I'm like, you guys, you're going to die out here. Just come in. Nope. No, not happening.
Damn.
So they sat outside. So we shot, you know, and then Brian took the gun and chased the guys around, and it was a great time. And again, it's these conversations that, you know, I mean, and I've had conversations with Cody where I've thought, man, I've told him, you know, I'm really disappointed in what, you know, what Brian posted, or, you know, that video or you know, that thumbnail was like,
yeah.
But I'll say this, I'm equal opportunity. I popped on one of Kevin's videos the other day, and he's pulling the shed skin off that Venomoid king cobra, and the first thing I thought was, oh God.
Yeah.
Oh, if you don't know what that is, the assumption you're making is he's doing exactly what we're not supposed to be doing. Yep. So there's things that, you know, there's things that we do that perception leads us to the negatives. Right. And sometimes an explanation of, you know, sitting after it's done, an explanation of, hey, this is why I was doing it. This is, you know, we rescued this animal. And I know that area, Hamburg Reptile Show years ago when I lived in New York, there was a guy there that did them, you know, so I know how all that stuff goes. And I know those animals need a good home, and, you know, who better to take care of them? Kevin knows his stuff. So, but again, you look at just the perception of that first 10 seconds. And sometimes that's all it takes to form that negative, oh my God, you know. And again, back to YouTube is a business, and I'm watching these influencers that are talking about how they got their following, and, you know, they're like, you have to understand that you're going to hit a point where it's pivotal that you stay true to yourself and do your thing, and don't change, or you change and you lose a following. And some of these guys that both of my sons watch, they do the dumbest things, and they have these huge followings, but they're very consistent, and it never changes. And it's like, I get it. I get it now. YouTube is a business, and if you want to make that business your lifestyle and your income, there's the only one way to do it. The problem is during times like this, I think sometimes those things are going to hurt us as a community.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always interesting to, you know, and I talked about this a lot when we brought Donnie on at Nerd to do all of our filming, you know, cause he's very much like focused on YouTube, and like he's watching everything, and
I
you
know.
So he's like, yeah, so he's like, man, you know, like I want to do something like this, and it's like, oh, well, you know, okay, well, I'm not necessarily opposed, but we need to make sure we're doing X, Y, and Z, so it doesn't look like this horrible thing, whatever, you know. And I think for the most part we've done a pretty decent job of that. But so you have to find that balance. That's always been the challenge, is like finding that balance of like, okay, well, obviously we're making hardcore reptile content because, you know, we don't have a zoo. We typically, you know, with the exception of when we came down for Southeast Carpet Fest, you know, we don't really travel all that much. So everything we're filming is what's happening in the building. You know, so how do we make new angles on these stories? And also stay very true to that, like we're hardcore reptile people. And, you know, we've seen the comments, you know, when Donnie first took over, it's like, oh my God, this camera guy is terrible. Get rid of that guy. Blah, 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 blah. This, that, he sucks. Da, da, da.
I remember watching some of the first videos and thinking, did they just go out and find this guy at like Home Depot or something?
Yeah.
Hey, you want to come and film? Because he had no idea. And then I was like, did they tell him that this was like a reptile related show? And this guy
you want to know what's funny, dude, is when I first started, Donnie was working with monitors.
Really?
Yeah. He was doing the monitor thing, dude. And
That's
like,
awesome.
he actually like likes reptiles. Like, but he's, I mean, he likes them, he enjoys them, but he's not like, he's not into it. Like,
like we all are.
Yeah. So, you know, so he's like, man, like I like learning, I do like learning about these things, but I'm also, he's like, I'm going to approach this from, you know, that newbie standpoint of like, you just said the word epistasis. Whoa, what the, hang on. What the hell are you talking about? What does that mean? Speak normal, you know, like, cause you lose people, you know, that aren't really invested. If they're like, oh man, this thumbnail's got really pretty ball python. Now all of a sudden this guy's talking to me like I'm in some science lecture at a college. Like, I don't want to hear that, you know, so you got to find that balance, and that's where it gets challenging. But you know, if you put the thought process into it, you can make it work. But yeah, man, YouTube is a friggin' challenge, man.
Well, it's you know, I've said it a million times. I have a full-time job. I have no intentions of saying that YouTube is going to be anything other than just something fun, like chit-chatting with friends and doing these videos. However, when you start looking at it, I watch Think Media a lot, and a lot of the things that he says is just, hey, be organic, and that time might come where you never know. And it's like, even Anna said the night that Rob came on, you know, 3 or 4 hours before that, I was like, you know what, maybe I'm not going to do this. And she's like, why not? And I'm like, you know, it's like 4 hours away and I'm shaking, you know, I'm like, I have such anxiety.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, but if you don't just do it, you're never going to do it. You know, if you don't just jump in and just do it, you're never going to do it. And she said, if you get 10 or 15 episodes in and you decide this just isn't what you want to do, then you just stop. What's, you know, it's no different than stopping working someplace that you don't want to work anymore. And it's become more and more fun. And what my hope from this is that we can do positive things to help everybody in this industry. And again, I'm nobody. I tell people this all the time when I preach about free handling and how bad it is, and somebody says, well, who are you to say, but I'm nobody. But guess what? I have an opinion, and I'm a grown-ass man, and I'm going to tell you why my opinion is what it is. And here's the thing. I say this to everybody. Tell me why. Give me a good reason, and I'll agree. You can't give me a good reason. Who wins? All of us that stand back and say you're doing it wrong. And that goes for any industry. It goes for any hobby. It goes for any sport. It doesn't matter. There's always that right and wrong way. You know, when we came up to Nerd, we were up there for the NCAA lacrosse championships that my son Andrew was playing in. So he was playing in the national championship. It doesn't get any better than that. And he worked from his freshman year in high school all the way up into college to get to that point. He put the time and effort in and did it the right way. Whereas other kids that we knew didn't take that path that he did, and they didn't get there. They could have, but they didn't. So in everything we do, there's rights and wrongs, whether it's guns. And I always put our hobby alongside of firearms, because when you have USARK and the NRA does a fantastic job at getting everybody together, no matter their differences, to fight a bill or fight legislation, where we just don't do that. We're not that big. I get it. Before anybody says, we're not the NRA, we're not that, I get that. But guess what? We could be. We could be. But the problem is there's too much hate. I don't hate anybody. I may dislike what you do, but the guys that live here in Florida, we all have to work together. And unfortunately, I may not agree with what you do on YouTube, but if it came down to it and we were all going to lose our animals, I would stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder, no doubt. So I may not agree with what you do, but that's just life. You know, we don't always agree with everything. So
that's it, man. And I think that really is the key thing to recognize, you know, especially as, you know, because inevitably as Facebook groups grow and attention to different topics grow, people's opinions grow and develop in one way or the other. And more often than not, we lose that. Yeah. Where it's like, you know what, I might not agree with everything that you do, but when push comes to shove in a situation like this, I'm gonna be right there with you, because we're literally all in this together. What happened in Florida will directly impact what happens in another state, and I'm very hopeful that the legal recourse that happens for FWC allows the rule change to go back to what it was, and keep the conditional species permits. I think that is beneficial. Because I mean, it's in all reality, it's not like anything's going to stop.
No, you just pushed everybody underground.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there were a couple of people that brought that up in the hearing, and you kind of saw the eyebrows raise a little bit, like it was something they didn't even think about.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, what did you expect them to just sit down and kiss your feet because you are FWC commissioners? Like, no, bro. Like, that doesn't work that way.
If people wanted to keep these animals, it's very, very easy to figure out ways around shipping and everything else here in Florida, and they don't, there's just no, what are you going to do? People are you are literally telling people, hey, you no longer have to pay for a permit. You no longer have to have an inspector come. You just do whatever you want.
Yep.
I mean, I just, it's mind numbing for all of us. And we hope that the support from USARK, we hope that there's some maybe time that passes here in the next couple of weeks, and with Senate being back in session right now, maybe we can, work on pushing for, something else to change that, at least modify it, make it better. So
yeah, 100%. And I would also encourage anybody that's down in Florida that's listening to this, to check out the Florida chapter of USARK. Michael Cole's on the board, Eugene Bissett, like a lot of key players in the industry are involved, and find out if there's ways that you can help. Reach out to them and say, hey, can we get a USARK booth happening at, the next Repticon in Tampa or whatever, just something.
Yeah, all the Florida shows have USARK has a booth there.
Bam.
All the Repticon shows, yes.
That's what I'm talking about. So that we need more of that, because I called out Repticon in a post about when I first saw the Illinois piece of legislation get proposed, because I was at two different Repticons. I was at one in Atlanta and then one in Asheville, North Carolina, and there were no USARK anythings.
Wow.
Like, nothing. And that to me was just shocking, especially the one in North Carolina, where it's like literally the state below you just like destroyed anybody who works at Tegus. One state below you. There wasn't an announcement over a loudspeaker, at least. There's no booth. Like, at least make an announcement. At the very least to the vendors during the 30-minute break. But, so I had a problem with that. I also had a problem with the fact that with over 120,000 Facebook page likes, anything from USARK was not only was it not getting any attention organically, but it also was getting like no attempted boost. So there was not even a willingness to like give, $10, to just try to boost that post, get it a little bit more attention. And when you have an automatic reach of over 120,000 people, like not even an attempt. Could you imagine if everybody who liked the Repticon Facebook became a USARK member? Instantly 120,000 people are now USARK members. Like, that's crazy. So there was the one post that day that I saw it. Then there was a post almost a month prior to that, and then another one only a couple weeks after that. So it was very sporadic, very random. And I was like, man, like, we got to be doing better.
Yeah.
Like, just in general, so I called him out, and I think I ruffled a couple feathers, and I'm myself, and I know a couple of other people are working on reaching out to the guys that run Repticon and just be like, hey, like, you guys have been able to do shows during this pandemic, and in most, in most places where, like, up here, the New York shows have been canceled. Our show in New Hampshire was canceled. We did have one, but Repticon's able to happen because it's in all these different states. the least you guys could be doing is promoting. You know, the last thing that I had suggested was, hey, you should take 10% of your net income. So whatever you profit off this, take 10% of that and donate it to USARK.
Yeah, it's a write-off. If you run a good business, it's a write-off. People need write-offs right now. You have to have a tax write-off. So what better way to have a tax write-off than to donate that 10% and then write it back off in your taxes again? I don't, like, I get that. And that's, you know, back to the having a membership to vend.
Mm-hmm.
I get where people come from and they say, hey, you know, I donate animals to, you know, 3 auctions. Well, okay, you know, maybe there's something that we can do then, or USARK can do, to recognize those people, to say, hey, you know, they do make donations. However, it's $40.
Yeah.
I get it. There's a principle behind it. Sometimes people don't like being told what to do. I'm married, so I'm very used to it. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. I'm good. I have it down. Happy wife, happy life. And listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. I am just as bad as everybody else, because I never really put 2 and 2 together to even think about it until I started seeing all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? What am I doing? So I immediately went on it and became a member. And it's like, man, shame on me, you know, for not doing that. And I admit, you know, I'm not perfect. And sometimes it takes a kick in the ass, you know, to get you in line and put you where you need to be. And that was one of the big ones was, man, I didn't even, you know, you don't even think about it, you know, when you start hearing about, oh, you know, the Daytona auction raised over $100,000 and Tinley raised over $100,000. You're like, oh man, they're doing good. But let's be real. It isn't just about the finance. It is about the number of us that can stand up and say, I'm a proud USARK member, and we're here to support everybody from Florida to, you know, Seattle, Washington to, you know, Arizona back up to Maine. You know, we need to support one another, and all these laws and everything that are coming up. I mean, it's mind numbing. You just start Googling stuff. There's a lot more than people realize. And they're all looking at us like we're a bunch of toolboxes, and that's really what it is. You know, I mean, if you guys would stop pulling the shed off of your snakes, we would be better. Just had to throw that in there.
That's great.
Oh yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I just figured I'd throw that out there.
I love it.
But I mean, it is, you know, not being able to travel right now. You know, reptile industry is doing very well from everybody I talk to. They're like, man, you know, people aren't traveling, so all that extra money they have, for the most part, people that are working still are able to spend it on, you know, cool stuff. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little jealous the other day watching like box after box after box after box of water monitors get opened up, and I was like, how?
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys have enough time?
Yeah.
You know, how do you socialize 1,000 water moniters? Just curious.
It's one person's job to literally go Gucci Gucci goo.
That's funny.
And every once in a while he gets bitten, and those are the ones we keep for a little longer.
yeah, right. That's a bit bad.
Yeah.
You know, when Aiden was younger, he was little, and I'm going to tell this story because it's a fantastic story. So I work midnights. I get up one day and I go downstairs, and there's a business card in the door from the SPCA. I'm like, the hell is this? So I call the phone number, and the guy's like, oh, you know, I'm with the SPCA. You know, we had a complaint that, you know, you had snakes and that you weren't taking care of them, and you had your son was running around with your cat in a stranglehold, you know, and it was hurting the cat. And I'm like, at that point in time, the house that we were renting, the owners were selling, so they were bringing people through. And, you know, I mean, yeah, it was breeding ball pythons at the time. So I had males and females together, and some of the cages might not have been absolutely spotless. Again, I don't want to disturb what's You know, I don't like being disturbed when I'm trying to, you know. So I don't want somebody coming in and poking at me.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, he's like, yeah, I have to come out and investigate. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, when? And he's like, well, you know, preferably soon. And I'm like, all right, well, do me a favor. I don't know you. I've never had this happen before. Bring the sheriff's department. You know, if you're coming in, I want a sheriff with you. So he's like, okay, no problem. So he came with a sheriff that was like, she was like 6'7". I swear, she was huge. Like, look up at this lady like, wow, you brought the big guns. So he comes in the house and I'm like, listen, you know, here's my ball pythons. I don't have a lot. We have a couple pastels, a couple Mojaves, normals, you know, whatever. But all the males are breeding with these females and I'm not opening up any boxes. They're opaque, shine a light through it. Mm-hmm. So he shines a light, she shines a light. He's like, well, yeah, you know, I see, you know, and I pulled open a couple of them. And he's like, all right. He goes, well, where's the cat? And I'm like, fuck if I know. You know, it's a cat. Yeah. It's probably hiding and sleeping somewhere. Yeah. So we go upstairs and there's the cat on my daughter's bed and it just kind of looks up at us like, you know, hey, what's up? Yeah. So we go, he's like, oh, you know, there was another complaint. You guys had chinchillas and they weren't taken care of. And I'm like, what? So this went on, you know, we took chinchillas out and the sheriff was like, oh my God, these are amazing. I'm going and getting one. I'm like, oh, great. Perfect. So yeah, exactly. You have no idea what you're looking at, but you're going to go get one. Yeah. So we go back downstairs and he's like, well, all right, you know, everything is good. You know, I mean, I'm happy with what I see. So, you know, no harm, no foul. I'm leaving. So he leaves. So a couple days later, my wife calls me and she's like, hey, you're not going to believe what just happened. Aiden was back in the snake room. You know, now he's little. Mm-hmm. He's 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And she goes, I hear him yell. And then I hear, bad snakey, bad snakey. And she goes running out there and he's got a box open. He's got the male in one hand and he's tapping the female on the tail and she's biting him. And he's like, bad. And she's like, oh my God. She goes, I felt so bad. So at that point, then I had to put locks on everything so that Junior couldn't get into him anymore. But we raised the kids around these animals and taught them that this is just, you know, if you do it, it's your fault. And she said, yeah, he didn't cry, just was mad that the snake wouldn't let him pick her. She would not let him grab her. She would just bite him. He would try to grab him. He'd be like, damn. You know, the male was like, hey, whatever, pick me up, man. I'm good. Yeah. You know, so, but these are the things that people don't realize that, you know, one of my emails to the senator here in Osceola County was just that reptiles has been a part of our lives for as far back as I can remember. And I always said I would never be like my dad, who worked all the time and was always tired and just never really did anything with me and my brother. Was just go do your thing. You know, I don't want to be bothered. Yeah. So one of the things that we decided was, because of my love of reptiles, was, hey, why don't we all do this together? And me and my wife decided, let's just keep the kids involved and we'll go to reptile shows as a family. We'll do reptile events as a family. This is a family thing, you know? So, you know, when we came up, when I saw, the first thing I did when I saw where the lacrosse game was Google the stadium and see how far it was to Nerd. That's the first thing I did. And my wife is like, how far is it? I said, 1 hour. She's like, we're going. I said, we're going. And I said, I don't care. I don't care. We're going. So it was cool to be able to come up and see that stuff. And my daughter and Aiden, you know, we have pictures with them with the albino water monitors. And, you know, I've got a picture with the big alligator snapping turtle and all this other cool stuff that we got to see that, you know, other people would be, you know, Boland's pythons, scrub pythons, you know, big retics. And it's like, you don't really get it until you really see that part. And that's part of my email is, I don't think you understand. I don't have a business, but my family has a love. And it's something that we do as a family. So my kids have been so heavily involved in it that even my daughter that's up in New York, Brianna, is she went to school for zoo management, you know, or animal management. She works at a vet's office. She keeps her own reptiles, you know. So it's like, you know, this is something that we all love. And it does, it really bothers me that people can't see past the agenda. Yeah. You know, and when you have a commissioner doing what he's doing, it's a slap in the face to all of us, you know, across the country, not just here in Florida. That's across the country, because everybody's going to do the same thing. We all know all these people talk, you know, right. They talk, There's, oh, did you hear what happened? You know, we got all this pushback from this bill. You guys should look at this too. They talk. So,
Yep.
but so what's exciting over there, Brassman, that you're working on right now? What do you got breeding?
Oh man. I got a few things. So I'll say this. This year is very exciting for me because last year when I had moved up to Nerd, or a year and a half ago, whatever, when I moved up to Nerd, I had everything set up in one part of the building, and then or of my house, and then I was like, oh man, I need to move everything to a different area. And that was right in the middle of the breeding season.
Oh.
So it totally messed up my breeding season, my first breeding season up here. And what was shaping up to be a great year was probably one of the worst years I've ever had production-wise.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I produced a total of 15 offspring. And
wow.
yeah, from like three animals or something.
Oof.
Yeah, it totally messed me up. This year, I'm on track to produce anywhere between 15 and 25 clutches, between ball pythons and carpet pythons, Borneo short-tail pythons, but just between those three species and retics. So just between those few species alone, I'm very excited. My retic female she's making it very painful for me waiting for these eggs to be dropped. She's like, I know it's like 30 to 45 days. I think I might go to like 48 days, and then we'll talk.
I've been there.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, like every day there's no clutch on the ground. You just want to like jump off the roof of the building. But like that project, I'm very excited about. It's I bred a platinum marble to a super tiger orange ghost stripe. And the Super Tiger OGS was actually the first retic I ever produced.
Okay.
I got in a pair of tiger het orange ghost stripes from Kevin many years ago. Raised those up, bred those, and produced this girl. So now here we are 4 years later, and she's breeding, and that's one of the most rewarding things for me. Is like to get an animal, to get animals, raise them, breed them, have their offspring, raise those, breed those, and create the next generation. I love that.
Yeah,
so
that's super cool.
Yeah, so I'm growing very impatient waiting for these eggs. But
so we did the CSP thing and we got retics. I bought a pair from Stephen Tillis. We had a golden child het purple and a purple male that he raised from hatchlings. They produced for him, and then we had them and they produced for us. And arguably the coolest process that we have ever been through. And it was like, okay, we got the male, he ate twice. Steven tells me, oh, don't even worry about the male. We'll eat anything that gets left over. Doesn't matter how big or small or what it is, it'll eat it.
Yeah.
Well, that male ate for me 2 times. And then for 6 months, nothing.
You wanted nothing. Oh, no.
Nothing. So I'm like, this is odd. Like the female's a powerhouse. Like she's just constant. Yeah. And I text Steven. I'm like, man, I'm starting to get nervous. He's like, well, what's he doing? I was like, dude, he's constantly running around the cage.
He wants to breed.
And he is like, introduce him. And I'm like, okay. So I got both the doors on the female's cage pushed to the middle. And my wife's like, what are we going to do? We all have hooks in our hands. I'm like, if they attack each other, because all I can think of is some of these videos and people talking about how if they're not ready, they'll fight. And I'm like, what are we going to do? I said, I'm just going to sacrifice myself and jump in the middle of them, because I'm not letting them get hurt. Yeah. So we put the male in there. Within 15 minutes, they were locked up.
Yep.
I mean, it was crazy. My wife's like, she said, first thing she said is, that snake's a hoe. I'm like, it was time, I mean,
it was time. That's it.
So we went through all that, and then we went through the shed, and okay, it's 30 days. Well, man, it's 32 days, 36 days. Okay, well, sometimes they say like 40 to 45. So it's 45 days, 46 days. I'm like, man, she's rolled over completely. She looks enormous. Her scales are stretched. And one night, I think it was like midnight, I got up to go to the bathroom, and the snakes were on the other side of the house. And I walked across the house, and I just popped the door open and turned the light on, and there was 2 eggs in there, and I about lost it. I screamed. Everybody woke up. They're like, "Oh my God, what's the matter? Is the house on fire?" I'm like, "Oh, look!
Oh, there's eggs."
Yeah. So it's so hard to go back to sleep. So she was a sweetheart getting them off. We had a great clutch. It was so much fun. But
Hell
you know,
yeah.
alas, last year when they passed that law, I was like, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen. And I had amassed at that point a collection of like 8 retics, and I'm like, I'm just gonna move them all, put them with somebody that can use them for educational or breeding purposes, because at least that way that person's covered. And we just switched over to ball pythons, and now we're raising up. I think we've got a dozen ball pythons and maybe right around a dozen boas, and I got an emerald tree boa that's over here that's stubborn as shit, and then I've got this crazy. Every time I do this recording, right here next to me, there's this jaguar, or is it jag? Yeah, jag carpet that's had granite, and this snake hates the world. Hates the world. If I open that door up, it flies out at me. You know, it's only 18 inches, 20 inches long. It's just a
classic juvenile carpet.
Yeah, and it doesn't really have the head wobble until it gets worked up, and then it just flops all over the place like it's having a seizure. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But they're fun, you know. I mean, it's
oh hell yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I wish people could see what our feelings really are for our animals. You know,
100%.
I mean, I know, like I said, I don't agree with the free handling stuff, but Will is one of those guys that, you know, he cares so much for his animals and the foxes, and to see some of the videos and stuff. And I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of those YouTube videos anymore, because I see things that, you know, just aggravate you. And then it's like, then I don't want to watch any of them. So if I see something catches my eye, I may watch something, but for the most part, like, I just stopped watching all that stuff, you know. So, but hopefully, you know, we can knock down walls, and I need you to send me the link to that group.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Because I would like to join and be there. So, but man, it was great having you on.
Hell yeah, man.
I'll go ahead and link all your info. This is episode 10, so I think it's like the end of March. But
sweet.
I'm not 100% that I might not cheat and release this one way sooner because of what it is. But I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know.
Well, the way things are going, it's going to be relevant for a while.
Yeah, so. for sure. Yeah, I've got some this week. Stephen Cush is on.
Oh, so, sweet.
Yeah, that one was 2 hours of pretty much the same thing, you know. And I'll say this in closing: Stephen, for being 20 years old, has a fantastic head on his shoulders. And one of the things that he pushed was us as YouTube people. I don't even really want to call myself a YouTube people. Myself as a YouTube person, whatever, or you guys, any of us. And I'll say this, even if you don't have a YouTube channel, somebody like Cody that posts all his videos on the Patreon, a 5-minute video every week of good stuff will wash away all the bad stuff. That's the Stephen said that, and it literally blew my mind, because I didn't even think about that the more good stuff we all put out will just wash that bad stuff away, and it will just make it irrelevant. We don't even need to talk about it. You know, we just do our thing and be positive. So
Stephen is definitely somebody that I find myself watching a lot as his collection grows, and he's, you know, working with some amazing animals and stuff. And I have to be in early May. I'm going to be out in the Detroit area for some music work, and I'm popping down to see Barczyk, and then I'm also going to pop down to hang out with him and Dez, and I'm very excited to get the chance to do that and see some of the amazing animals that they're working with over there. Because every time I see a story or an Instagram post, I'm like, what is that? You know, like I started messing with him when I saw him posting ball python pairings. I was like, hey man, where's the stickers and the t-shirt, bro? You got to become a real one of these ball python guys. You know, we need stickers and t-shirts.
Well, the one that got me was the rattlesnake.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
I saw that, and I was like, really now?
But he did make mention on the show that they were going to start looking into some hot stuff and just some more rare things like that. So one of the things we talk about in the show is the IND permits and how to get your own anti-venom. And, we will be working on that with Cody very soon. So just kind of tying up some loose ends, and then we'll start that process. So.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, brother. It was great having you on.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you.
This was a lot of fun. Oh yeah. We have to, I want to put something together where we can have like a bunch of us on at one time. That's why I like Zoom. We can have all kinds of people on and have fun. So
hell yeah.
all right, brother. Well, again, it was great having you on. For all of you that are watching right now, please go to usark.org, become a member, check out USARK Florida. And like we said, it's $40. It's for a year. You even get a t-shirt.
You do get a t-shirt. And it's packed. It's packed by Phil Goss.
Really?
Yeah, he's the guy that's putting that t-shirt in the envelope, man.
See? So, I mean, you get a $20 t-shirt, a $20 membership for your first, you can't beat that.
There you go.
And it makes you a part of this whole group that we all love. So let's pay it forward and get it done. So again, thanks for coming on, Jeremy. And we will definitely have you back. So
sweet.
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
All right.